The pressure volume loop is a way of representing the mechanical events that are taking place in the heart. The axes for the pressure volume loop are pressure against volume, with pressure being measured in millimeters per mercury and volume being measured in milliliters. If we focus on the left side of the heart, when the mitral valve opens, this is when the atrial pressure is greater than the ventricular pressure. So blood is moving from the atria into the ventricles. The ventricle will start to fill with blood. When this happens, the volume inside the ventricle will start to increase and the pressure in the ventricle will also increase. Eventually, the pressure inside the ventricle will increase above the pressure in the atria, so the mitral valve will close. The closing of the mitral valve indicates the end of ventricular diastole. So the volume in the ventricles at this point is known as the end-diastolic volume. The ventricle will now start to contract. Because it is a closed system where the mitral valve is closed and the aortic valve is closed, when the ventricles contract, there will be a significant increase in pressure, but there will be no change in volume. That is why it is a straight line at this point, and this phase is known as ISOVOLUMETRIC contraction. The pressure in the ventricles will continue to increase, and eventually the pressure in the ventricle will rise above the pressure in the aorta, and then the aortic valve will open. The ventricle will continue to contract, and the blood will start to get ejected into the aorta. The volume in the ventricle will start to decrease, and eventually the pressure in the ventricle will start to decrease below the pressure in the aorta, and then the aortic valve will close. The closing of the aortic valve indicates the end of ventricular systole. That means that the volume in the ventricle at this point is known as the end-systolic volume. The ventricle will now start to relax. Again, because it is a closed system where the aortic valve is closed and the mitral valve is closed. When the ventricles relax, there will be a significant drop in pressure, but there will be no change in volume. That is why it is a straight line again, and this phase is known as isovolumetric relaxation. The stroke volume is the difference in the end-diastolic volume and the end-systolic volume, and that is represented by this arrow here. And that is the pressure volume loop.